So I'm going to talk about how to prepare your printing plate. So you're going to take your plate and you'll notice that it's a shiny surface. So in order for the paint to stick, we're going to add a little bit of dish soap onto the plate and use your finger just to kind of smear it around. You just want a thin layer, so make sure that it's not too thick, just a nice even thin layer, removing any excess with a paper towel or with a clean finger. So now it's time to let that plate dry. This would be a great time to get started on the drawing, which is what we're going to do next. Since we are just practicing and getting used to this technique, choose something super simple to draw. It could just be something abstract. You could do something representational, but don't spend more than, I'd say, 5 minutes on your drawing. We don't need to mark in any values. This just needs to be a line drawing. Take that plate that has the dried soap on it, and you're going to put it on top of your drawing. Now, when you are painting on your plate, you can still see your drawing underneath, which is really, really great, particularly when you do or if you do decide to do something that's a lot more complex. Go ahead and take some painter's tape and secure the corners so it's not moving when you're painting. To get ready for painting, you are going to need some watercolor brushes, a cup with water, a paper towel, and of course watercolor paints. Now we are using watercolor tube paints, which are more concentrated. The idea is that you add water to that highly concentrated pigment to then give you watercolor paint. I would say that a little goes a long way. Use just a drop. You could always get more. You're also going to want about a half a sheet of palette paper. I would just tape it down directly onto your table. I find that that's just easier. There's no need to get a formal palette. And then it's time to start painting. So you're going to approach this the same way that you would any other watercolor painting. The less water that you use, the more concentrated and saturated your color will be. The more water you use, the lighter it's going to be. Now, you're going to notice that the paint kind of pools up and gets into these little puddles on the plate, and that is just part of this method, part of this material, so don't fight that. This is not one of those graphic acrylic paint moments. You really want to lean into the nature of watercolor. So at this time, go ahead and pause this video and grab your drawing paper, grab your plate, and work your way all the way up to this point. Then resume the video to figure out how to print your plate. So to get started printing, go ahead and take off the blue tape. I'd like to just completely clear my area, so go ahead and get rid of the palette, get rid of the watercolor paint, just put it aside. You don't necessarily have to completely clean up until you have a clean surface that you are ready to print on. Take the drawing out from underneath, and you are going to grab a piece of Bristol board that's what we are going to print onto. Now you're going to have to get a spray bottle of water and go ahead and saturate your paper pretty well with it. I mean, you don't want it to be like soaked, but certainly wet. Let it sit there for maybe just like 30 seconds, and then take a paper towel and dab the excess water. You certainly want your paper to feel moist all the way through. I know we don't like that word, moist all the way through, but you don't want like beads of water dropping off of it. Before you print, go ahead and call me over and let me take a look at your paper just to see that you have the right amount of water. So what I like to do, there are different ways of printing, but I like to put the plate down first and then put my paper on top of it, lining up the sides, top and bottom, putting it on there, holding it down, and then using a paper towel with a pretty significant amount of force to press down. I'd say that it's easy to sort of forget certain parts, so just make sure that you are being really thorough, pressing down as hard as you can. You can go ahead and peel back a corner if you just want to check how it's going, but press until you really feel like you have activated the watercolor, and then voila, pull your print. Now I can see that I missed that red area a little bit, but that's okay. There's always going to be a certain level of uncertainty with this. You might be tempted to put it back on the plate, but I would really just leave it like that and enjoy the beauty of the print as is. What I love about this technique is that you could use it as a step in a process, or you can really make a pretty realistic artwork. So I did this last week. It's still pretty simple. It's a still life, but it just kind of gives you an idea of how far you can take this. You can certainly do a full-blown project with this technique. And you can also use it as one step in a process. And what I mean by that is you could cut this up and use it as collage. You could go back in and paint on top using watercolor or acrylic paint, or you can draw a whole nother image on top of this, really layer. So there are a lot of things that you can do with this watercolor monoprinting technique.